I switched to PC from console in 2017, and I never looked back. While I grew up playing on the 6th and 7th gen consoles, the 8th generation was such a letdown that I switched to PC a few years in, and I couldn't help but develop the standard PC gaming superiority complex, better known as the PC Master Race mindset. But why, dear viewer? I've made a ton of videos over the years talking about console fanboys and the console war and explaining why the PC is offering them a better experience than whatever they're droning on about, but I've never made a video just deep diving into why the PC is a better gaming platform without any specific prompting from the console side of the fence. So in this video, I'm going to break down why PC gaming is better than console gaming in a frankly unnecessary amount of detail, with the goal of this being to convince new gamers to start on PC or convince console gamers to finally make the switch. In other words, yes, the point of this video is to explain why console gaming is stupid and outdated and you shouldn't partake in it. So first things first, I think it's important to establish what the experience on each platform is like, and for the sake of simplification, I'm going to refer to things as just console and PC, even though there's a lot of variation in both of those words. You know, the console side includes the PlayStation and the Xbox and the Switch, the same way that the PC side of things includes all the various hardware possibilities and storefronts and whatnot. But all the consoles have a shared core experience, the same way that more or less the PC does, so let me just lay this out. The core console experience is this: you buy a piece of hardware with fixed specs, you buy games for that console from a handful of approved locations, you pay the console manufacturer extra money to access online multiplayer for some reason, and your experience is curated, to put it politely. You can only have the games that the console manufacturers approve of, and you can only have the hardware that the console allows. You can only use the software or operating system in a way that is approved by Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo, and because of all these limitations, prices are often higher than they have any reason to be, because each console ecosystem is more or less its own little monopoly. If you choose to play games on the PlayStation, it's not like you can go anywhere else for PlayStation games, so why not charge extra for them? You've already committed money to the PlayStation hardware, so why not make you pay extra to play your own games online? You already bought the console, so why not charge out the butt for controllers and hard drives? And all the while, you're often not getting the greatest technical performance, because not only do Sony and Microsoft have basically no incentive to really make good hardware, but the publishers making games for this hardware have basically no incentive to optimize their games properly, because it's not like console gamers aren't going to buy the game regardless. Nobody wants to raise the bar on the console because there is genuinely no incentive for them to do so. Raising the bar for technical performance on the consoles would mean they're just offering a better product for the same amount of financial returns, at least in their eyes, so why would they do that? The console experience, in every regard, is curated, and you can be fine with that. I'm not saying this is something that you have to be holding a pitchfork about. You can be okay with everything that I just said, but you can't deny that that's what it is. The core PC experience, on the other hand, is hard to define, because even though I said a few minutes ago that the PC has a core experience the same way the consoles do, I kind of lied, because it really doesn't. And that's one of the great things about it. Not only are there tons of different hardware options for the PC, meaning that there's constant competition to make better hardware for the consumer, because any product can be replaced at any time instead of the hardware being locked in one place for a decade, but also there's the fact that there are tons of companies making all these pieces of hardware, which means there's competition for every aspect of the hardware system itself. There's tons of companies competing for your business for GPUs, CPUs, motherboards, RAM, and with that constant competition, that means the hardware is constantly being pushed to new heights all the time, which is why games perform so much better on the PC on net. It's why performance caps on the PC are so much higher than what's on the console. This also applies to the game marketplace, because while the console only allows its games to be sold in a handful of places, those basically just being physical stores or the official digital console marketplace, you know, the Xbox Live Store or the PSN Store. But on the PC, digital games can be sold in any number of places without any real curation and without the need of publisher approval. This means that there are way more games on the PC, and prices are constantly being pushed down by competition within the PC ecosystem itself. The lack of proper hardware generations also means games don't expire, and there's no need to worry about things like backwards compatibility, because basically every PC game is still playable on every modern gaming PC, give or take a bit of fiddling with settings or potential emulation for the really old stuff. There's no need to rebuy games because they're not going to suddenly become unplayable on new hardware. The lack of top-down corporate hardware and software distribution also means the player has more options to customize the game's performance and to mod the game itself to create something new, and you don't have to pay to play your own games online because there's not a corporation hovering over you and telling you that you have to. The only potential downside of PC gaming, and I mean the only potential downside for a newcomer, is the hardware knowledge upon entry. And no, I don't consider the higher price of the hardware to be a negative, because obviously a piece of hardware that does everything better than a different piece of hardware is going to be more expensive than that other piece of hardware. Which is why I think it's ridiculous when console people try to demean the PC by saying, oh, the hardware's so expensive. Well, yeah. The PC is more expensive than the console because it's better than the console. It gives you more for your purchase. It's more future-proof. It doesn't try to vacuum money out of your pockets at every opportunity. And in the long run, PC gaming is way cheaper than console gaming. So no, I don't consider the generally higher cost of hardware to be a negative against the platform. But I digress. Like I was saying, the only potential downside of PC gaming is the knowledge needed of the hardware when you first get started, but even then, I think it's an overblown issue. With a console, you just buy the machine and that's it. But with the PC, you either buy a pre-built or you make your own, and if you plan on doing upgrades in the future or to be more involved with the hobby in the future, if you plan on being a PC gamer for more than just a very casual experience, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with just having a casual PC gaming experience, but if you want more than that, you'll have to have some idea of what the different components are and what they do. That being said, I think it's actually very easy to learn those things, and this is yet another thing that's overblown by people who don't actually play on the PC. And like I said, if you want to buy a pre-built or just get a Steam Deck or something like that and never think about hardware, that's absolutely an option. You can be as casual or as hardcore as you want with a PC. But if you want to get the most out of your system and the most out of the hobby, you should know about things. And things like the CPUs, the GPUs, the RAM. But this is by no means a negative of the platform in my opinion, because these are all things that are very easily Googleable and will be fused into your brain after a single experience with them. So while PC gaming isn't as simple as console gaming, I don't consider that to be a negative. I consider it to just be a difference. It's like I said about the cost. The reason it's more complicated and less straightforward is because it's a much bigger platform that does more stuff and gives you more in return. There's a segment of the gaming community that seems to think acknowledging all the things I just discussed is an inherent attack on their platform of choice, and while I don't think this is the case, I can actually understand this perspective pretty easily. Companies like Nintendo and Microsoft condition their players to want to give them more money and to defend them from criticism when it arises. This is not a conspiracy, that's an actual thing that big companies do. They want to create brand loyalty. It's not uncommon and it's not strange because, why wouldn't you do that if you're a business? Why wouldn't Sony and Microsoft want some guaranteed income and a built-in shield from smaller controversies and bad PR moves? So you get companies like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft trying to act like they're doing what's best for you, and you may believe that if you enjoy their product, but in reality, their platform is still infinitely more restrictive than what's possible on a gaming PC. So when you get down to it, the console platform, any console platform, will always be fighting an uphill battle when it comes to technical innovation or open market potential. And this means when the mask starts to slip and Microsoft or Sony do something that objectively hurts the consumer and only the consumer, PC gamers are usually the first ones to point it out and make fun of it. And naturally, the knee-jerk reaction of a loyal customer is to defend them even if their defenses don't make a whole lot of sense. Example, hey, how come AAA console games still don't have graphical settings? How dare you interfere with the developer's vision? Hey, how come Sony tried to force people onto the PlayStation by restricting crossplay for the longest time? Well, what's the problem? Just get a PlayStation if you care so much. Hey, how come console games are all $70 now? Something development costs and something AAA experience. And it's because you guys defended the $70 thing that $70 thing crossed over to the PC. Thanks for that. We really appreciate it. But ultimately, the whole discussion comes down to this. Do you want a curated experience or do you want a more liberated one? Do you want someone telling you what you can and cannot or should and should not do with your hobby, or do you want to make those decisions for yourself? Do you want a smaller list of curated games that cost more, or do you want all the games from all the eras of gaming for way less money? And yeah, you can tell me I'm biased and you can tell me I'm being unfair, but I genuinely don't see it that way. You can list off to me the negatives of PC gaming, you can list off to me the positives of console gaming, but at the end of the day, I think the debate boils down to a very simple question. Do you want corporate curation in your hobby, or do you want freedom in your hobby? Because while corporate curation can lead to some positive things like less shovelware games, and that's really the only positive I can think of, corporate curation will always, 100% of the time, cost you more money for less options because you are paying for the corporation to provide you with the curation, even if the curation itself is not what you want. You entered their ecosystem and you are paying to maintain it. The hardware is curated and thus gives you less options for parts. The operating system is curated and thus gives you less options for the user experience. The markets are curated and thus have less games for you to play and higher prices for you to pay because there's no competition between storefronts, and the storefronts that you do have don't take any consumer feedback into account because why would they? Where else are you going to go? And it's like I said, you may be fine with these things. You may be completely okay with everything that I've described, but that doesn't mean that those things aren't there or that they're objectively good for you. Just because you're fine with it doesn't mean it's the best option. Gaming on the PC is infinitely better than gaming on console, both from a user experience standpoint and a market standpoint. The user gets more games with better performance and more hardware options and more future-proofing. The console gets less games, lower performance caps, more paywalls, less software options, less hardware options, and yet, despite all of those limitations, you're actually paying more money in the long run for that lesser experience. Is the simplicity of console gaming really worth all those trade-offs? I really don't think so. Toodles.